India's big diplomatic blockbuster is just 3 days away and New Delhi is all prepped up for the 18th G20 summit. The visuals on your screen right now are from the national capital in all its glory. From the world's largest Nataraj statue to the main venue, Bharat Mandapam, all set with artifacts, murals and paintings depicting India's history and rich cultural legacy. Now, heads of state and leaders from 19 countries and the European Union, which is what makes up the G20, will meet in New Delhi on the 9th and 10th of September, marking the end of India's year-long presidency of the International Forum. Why does the G20 matter? Because all of us included, it comprises 60% of the world's population. It is 80% of the global GDP. And this year, it gives India the chance to position itself as the voice of Global South and push forward our priorities. Remember, formed in the aftermath of the Asian financial crisis back in 1999, the focus of G20 has expanded and evolved over the years. More than 200 meetings, 13 Sherpa track working groups, 8 finance track work streams, 11 engagement groups, and 5 initiatives later, India has set her priorities in front of the world. Multilateralism, peace building, green development and climate crisis, women-led development, and youth contribution in global development. All of these have been dwelled upon in this past 1 year. But for a grouping which has China with its big expansionist policy, Russia that refuses to toe the line and is in war with Ukraine, and the United States that is now reaching out to its allies in the Middle East and the Southeast Asia. What about the outcomes of this summit? How do you bring about a consensus on common challenges in this diverse group? I asked this to my guest tonight. I'm joined by Mr. Manjeev Puri, former permanent representative to the UN and former ambassador. He's been to Nepal and other places as well. Mr. Puri, welcome. Mr. Saurabh Shukla, founder newsmobile.in, also joins us on Mirror now. And Mr. Robinder Sachdev, foreign affairs and international economy expert, also joins us. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to all of you. And first, my question to you, Mr. Manjeev Puri. 1 year of several meetings across the country, 1 year of preparations, India putting forth her priorities, whether it is climate crisis, peace building, our Prime Minister saying that this is not an era of war, or the economy recovering from the pandemic. All of these have happened in these past few years, and they now culminate into this summit. First of all, sir, what are you expecting at this summit in terms of the outcomes?
Shreya, thank you very much. Obviously, that's the question on the minds of everyone. Look, my understanding is that, this communique, whatever is the outcome document, it is, of course, subject to pulls and pressures of the G20. But let's look at what are the major deliverables and where I am sure there has been progress. You mentioned the issue of digital public infrastructure. The world is about making this an important thing. It also has its utility in terms of carbon emissions. So, whether the wording is one which satisfies everyone or not, in general, this is going to be an area where our G20 gives it a push. You mentioned women-led development. Let me talk to you about another particular aspect which is very important. That is lifestyles for environment, and then the entire agenda of climate change, climate finance, reform of the multilateral development banks. All of these have been things that India has championed. And it is my belief that even those who are having issues with one expression or the other, which might become issues in terms of a communique, they are on the same page because these are issues which are important to the globe. And therefore, I dare say to everyone, including the haves of the world, the richest countries, the G7, if I may put it very simply. So I see this to be a summit which is not just the voice of the global south, but a summit in which the agenda of the global south will receive traction and enable us to either do things together concurrently across major countries, major economies, or at the de jure fora where these are the subject matters under discussion, like the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, etc.
Okay. Okay. Saurabh Shukla, this presidency of the G20 for India came amid the Russia-Ukraine war. It also came amid a time when economies around the world are trying to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Do we now see this as an opportunity for India to lead the world in a direction in which the priorities of the global south are prioritized and are on agenda?
Well, absolutely. My good friend, Ambassador Manjeev Puri, very rightly put out the complete context in which this summit is happening. But just to expand on that, I feel that this is a great opportunity to project a new India, a resurgent India, India's diplomatic, uh, I would say, might, because this is a showcase of India's vibrance. It is a showcase of India's newfound muscular diplomacy, India's soft power, and also its impact as a consensus builder, as a leader of the global south. And let me tell you that, it's not about outcome document alone. It's about the spirit of the G20 Leaders Summit or the Delhi Summit, which will come out when the leaders meet. And I can tell you, I've been talking to a lot of diplomats who have already gathered here, a lot of diplomatic sources, they're all telling me that the fact that India's presidency spread out the complete menu when it came to defining an agenda, finding a India-based solution to some of the biggest challenges that the world faces, be it of climate change, of getting digitization in solving problems for the common man, and to reach the last mile. These solutions will be on showcase. In fact, you will see at Bharat Mandapam, a special display has been set up for these world leaders to see India's prowess. It's not about only India's history and its vibrant culture. It is about the new India. It's about the startup culture India has created. It's about the drones. It's about banking reforms in terms of using, making sure that you're using UPI for even to buy vegetables in a small remote part of the country. All these are showcases of a new India and demonstrate India's new diplomatic soft power. That will be on showcase when the world leaders meet at Bharat Mandapam.
Sure, sure. Sure. Robinder Sachdev, important points both by Manjeev Puri ji and Saurabh Shukla ji. The fact that India has to present itself and it has been presenting itself as the new India. Also the fact that we've seen a changing geopolitical order in the last one and a half year. And we have seen the fact that our Prime Minister says that this is not an era of war, and it is picked up by world leaders and communiques around the world, which is used by countries to explain and to move forward in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. How do you see India really shaping this grouping?
Amazing question, and a pleasure, honor to be with you and our esteemed colleagues, Saurabh and Ambassador Manjeev ji. A couple of things. In a big picture, you yourself mentioned in the opening that, the post-COVID, post-Russia-Ukraine, etc. I will add to that one more element or component, the China-America race to be the number one empire or to keep the empire ship or to displace the empire, right? These three things combined, to my mind, post-2020 is leading to the creation of a new world. Absolutely. Before 2020, the world or the world order, we may say whatever, was somewhere, whichever way. Now, what is happening in this world of today, a new world, I would not use the word order, though sure, I would use the word of matrix. A new world matrix is being constructed. The world of today is under construction. You have a construction site, there's a sign, men at work or people, women at work. The world of today is under construction. When this is happening, I have a model I'll share with you at a high level. With your permission, may I?
Yes, please do, briefly.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, this is a model we have made to convey the world of today. The world of today is a matrix and in a matrix. It is not a new world order. It is. Order signifies things which are set. The world of today is multiple aspects. So post 2020, it's a new world order, a new world matrix under construction. The good thing, the great thing, and part luck for us, because G20 presidency came to us by roster rotation, is that we are leading the presidency. It has given us the opportunity to inject Indian thought or Indian thought as to what the world order could be, should be, a middle path, a sense of coexistence. When you mentioned that, Prime Minister said, this is not the era of wars. What is this an era of? This is an era to coexist via diplomacy, dialogue. It's not the era of war. The world is entering a complete new scenario, and what is happening now will shape the next 30 to 40 or maybe the entire rest of this century in terms of blocks where we're heading. Now, that's the big picture. Stepping back.
Absolutely. And
the
fact that,
please.
The fact, Manjeev Puri ji, that this is an era of coexistence, as Mr. Robinder said, also points to the fact that the Chinese president is not attending the G20 summit. One, does it matter? Two, does this give India an opportunity to cement its position as the go-to country when it comes to investments or security measures or any sort of tie-up and deal when it comes to the Southeast Asian regions?
So, Shreya, the Honorable Prime Minister is at the ASEAN-India Summit and the East Asia Summit. Obviously, the Southeast Asian region, the countries, the Indo-Pacific is of critical importance to us. They are an extended neighborhood. We have a huge Act East policy. So that goes without saying what you are saying. Let me say something to add to what Mr. Sachdeva said. We have become the largest country in the world, and we are on our way to becoming the third largest economy in the world. In fact, Goldman Sachs says by 2075, India will be the second largest economy. This change, in fact, the demographic change, because that's already happened, this is the major change in terms of the way the world will look at you. To start with, they'll say you are the biggest, but you're a developing country. Soon all that will change. And Shreya, let me tell you, it feels very good to stand at the number one position in any line, especially if it is an important line, even if it is not the most important line of the richest country. Now you're coming to China. Let me say this to you. The Chinese are present at the G20 meeting in strength. Their prime minister is going to be here at the summit. So the Chinese position, the Chinese interests would be certainly looked after and done so, as will be the Russian interest and the Mexican. The Mexican president is not coming. He doesn't travel. This having been said, the fact that President Xi Jinping is not here, there is a certain signal. We must accept that particular fact. What does this signal do? Does it allow you to project yourself? Is the fact that cameras will not be looking out and chasing him make any difference? Well, let's look at it in perspective. We are the hosts. All eyes will be on us. And we have done a very, very fine job in terms of standing up for the agenda that the global South wants to project. Indonesia was the beginning of this entire series of G20 summits taking place in the global South. After India, it will be Brazil and then South Africa. But we have used this to democratize the G20, taking it to every part of India and getting people from all over the world, not just the G20 countries, to visit India, see what we've done, and to identify themselves with the agenda of the global South. Our idea of championing African Union as being a member of the G20, all of this adds to it. So, let's be clear. India is the voice of the global South. India identifies itself and is a member of the global South. This is something which is strong and very much there. Frankly, the Chinese can't call themselves a member of the global South anymore. They've perhaps transcended, good for them, but we are it. And people recognize this fact. This will be even more strongly symbolized and put across in terms of our presidency of the summit, which begins in the next few days.
Yeah, but shouldn't it matter to China as well that it has to be presented as part of the global South? Saurabh Shukla, does it matter to China at all? Shouldn't it matter to China that it also has to be part of the global South and not probably come across as a country which has been isolated?
Well, Shreya, I want to start out by saying that Mr. Xi will realize that he's missing out on the biggest diplomatic party in town. This is, and I don't want to trivialize it when I say it's a party, but in the terms that this is the most important diplomatic event of, obviously, not only this month, but in terms of not only the substance, but also the fact that this will bring out solutions to problems that plague the world today. And if you're not sending out your president because of the fact that you want to demonstrate to India, and let me clearly spell it out, to demonstrate to India that we want to, send out a message by not letting Mr. Xi travel to India, let it be. Because this summit is going to go on. China obviously will be represented, but it will also, there is a big message going to the other countries which are members of G20, other special invitees about China's role in not only in ensuring that its expansionist tendencies come to the fore, but its bullying tactics come to the fore. Because I call these as part of its bullying tactics, which has been playing with its neighbors, whether in Asia Pacific or when it comes to even India. So the clear message is that India today not only demonstrates the qualities of a leader of the global South, it is also the voice. It is not a country which is pushing some of these countries into a debt trap, which China has been doing. And this is what is the message going to come out.
Yeah,
When
case
you
in
see,
point, Sri Lanka, absolutely. Yeah.
It may not be in the outcome
Yeah.
document, but when it comes to one-on-one meetings, it's very clear where India stands today and where China stands. China obviously completely gets elbowed out by its bullying behavior, like what it has been doing by not letting or not sending President Xi to attend the Delhi summit.
Sure. Sure. Robinder Sachdev, Ambassador Puri talked about the African Union, and it perhaps is the season of expansion because we just saw the BRICS being expanded, 6 countries added there, and now, of course, there is a plan to add the African Union as well in the G20, which might eventually make the grouping into G21. But why is the African Union important for the world? Why is India insisting on African Union, the African continent, being part of as diverse a grouping as the G20?
Couple of points. The world of today, I'll again go back to the idea of the matrix. The world of today is a matrix. Forget African Union, Africa continent with, X number of people, pardon, I forget the number, with an economy, whatever. A nation like Papua New Guinea is important. A nation like Solomon Island is important. America is wooing it. China is wooing it, right? Each minutest of a nation or a component on this planet Earth is now becoming important, or the awareness is becoming important. It's a matrix. Now, AU or African Union, of course, is a big chunk of that, all of those perspectives. So African Union, therefore, let's say that number of people and all. I'll come back to another point. See, we may be talking bigger pictures, but let's look at some concrete outcomes which should be expected from this G20. Apart from everything else, I would expect, and the G20 should deliver on a way forward to manage the debt crisis in over 60 plus countries, which are teetering on complete economic chaos, meltdown. Forget Sri Lanka, Pakistan. You have Lebanon, you have Egypt, you have XYZ, multiple in Africa, etc. There are over 60 countries which the IMF has identified, which are on the verge of economic collapse. The counter or how to manage or how to mitigate the situation is reform of two particular institutions, the World Bank and the IMF. Forget reform of the UN and UN Security Council. Keep it aside. I mean, let's not spend our political time capital on that. The World Bank and IMF are two agencies so far which are supposed to come in as firefighters to economic crises. Now, it is not necessary that IMF prescriptions work out always. The IMF is not, I mean, it's a doctor to the best, but it cannot always. So IMF has to be reformed in two senses. One, in terms of its lending capacity, it has to lend out more, whichever way. And secondly, in terms of the terms and conditions it imposes on the countries, wherein IMF goes and says, okay, I'll come, you do this, and you will improve. That prescription, unfortunately, very often, more than not, does not work. One concrete outcome out of this, gathering should be how the least developed countries or middle income countries, which are in a debt trap for whatsoever reasons, right, can be helped out, mitigated. So that's one concrete which should come out of this entire thing. The other thing would be that, there's talk about climate finance, climate change. G20 countries had committed that by 2020, I think they made this commitment back in 2008 or 9, that by 2020, every year, G20 countries will contribute upwards or $100 billion towards climate financing or change. So far, in 2020 to whatever right now, it's only been $25 billion. That number should move up, but I'm not very hopeful on that number because right now in today's global context, there is no country who has any money to, contribute towards somebody else. We are all fighting our own internal devils and
and
problems.
there's also that tussle between the developing and the developed world, which is why the climate action and the climate finance has been suffering for a long time now, this whole tussle between the developed and the developing world. But Ambassador Puri, let me also come to the big meeting, the big bilateral meeting that is expected on the sidelines of the G20 summit, which is between Prime Minister Modi and American President Joe Biden. What do you expect out of that meeting? We know this year US has also emerged as India's biggest trading partner. We've got, deals and agreements with the US on tech, AI. We have got defense exercises going on with them. What do you really see and how do you really see this meeting panning out and what do you expect from it?
Shreya, thank you. This is a very important question because President Biden's meeting with the Prime Minister is a kind of bilateral. It's more than just a pull aside at a multilateral meeting, half an hour thing. It's a structured meeting and President Biden is coming literally a day earlier so that the two are able to devote their time to a substantive meeting and a substantive Indo-American interaction. Now, first of all, matters that were discussed when the Honorable Prime Minister of India went to Washington, D.C. would be taken forward. Now, in the newspapers, there are several agenda items, including things such as jet engines, small nuclear plants, several other things. And I think many of these ideas which are being discussed between the countries will be taken forward. Let's remember, while officials can do a lot, chemistry between leaders is important and a push by leaders is particularly important. I want to refer to something which is important in the G20 context. The presidency in the United States put out a statement a few days back about the importance of reform of the World Bank and the IMF, something that Mr. Sachdev has also been stressing out. The fact that the United States, which is by far the largest player in the fund bank out there, that they are coming around to the point which India is making, that the MDBs need to be reformed. They need to do much more for development, for debt restructuring, for climate finance. This is particularly important and a hallmark of a major push initiated by India, where the Americans are coming together. It would, in my opinion, be an important issue of conversation with the president. Remember, while if the summit gets over in September, India's presidency only ends in November, by which time the fund bank's autumn meeting would have been held and the report of the expert group dealing with the funds, the banks, multilateral development banks reform would have presented its report. That would be a signal game-changing movement and something that India would have championed, and really one that would be deeply appreciated across the global south, not just by us, but across the entire global south, because the need of the hour is money for development, debt restructuring, and without any doubt, climate and sustainable development.
Yeah, absolutely. Saurabh Shukla, I also want to talk about, Manjeev Puri ji made interesting points there and crucial points there in terms of what the India-US relationship can do, not just for themselves, but for the entire world. But also in this whole, setup, we know that this is happening amid the Russia-Ukraine war. And therefore, I can't leave this question that US has been trying to reach out to its allies. Russia and China getting closer. We know that bloc is, getting more close amid this war. US is reaching out. Do you think President Biden would also use this summit to sort of reach out to US's Middle Eastern allies and sort of, project a joint bloc against the Russia-China bloc?
Well, let me say this, Shreya, that the U.S. Has a deep-rooted engagement with its Middle Eastern allies when it comes on the issue of Ukraine invasion. They've also been, in fact, at one stage, the U.S. was also willing to let India play the peacemaker. And I must say that behind closed doors, some efforts were also made. It was Russia's, I would say, hard bargaining and not letting go of certain things, which prevented a deal. But I can tell you one thing, that beyond President Biden has invested a lot in partnership with India, and especially the chemistry, which Ambassador Puri also spoke about, is very important. Today, chemistry between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi is, I would say, unparalleled. I saw it at the White House when the Prime Minister visited there, and also that has transformed the relationship. So this meeting, especially when President Biden comes here, will largely be focused on the bilateral context, especially on the first day, and the progress that has been made on the bilateral issues like defense cooperation, trade, space cooperation, cooperation in technology, AI, climate change. Those will be on the agenda. And largely, when it comes to G20, US will stand with India on some of the initiatives it has taken as the president of the G20 grouping, and this will help the global South gets a voice on issues that matter to it, because they will also have a big ally in one of the biggest countries and the leader of G20 grouping, that's the United States. And United States and India coming together on a lot of these critical issues mean a lot for the world. And clearly a message goes out to Russia and China that you will be elbowed out if you don't want to address some of the critical issues that face the world today. And that's the reason why you need to come together to make sure that it's not about political enmity. It is about creating and chartering a destiny for some of these critical issues like climate change, like economic inequality, which face the bulk of the countries today. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, at this point, I'm going to take the closing comments from all my panelists. Robinder Sachdev ji, first of all, to you, the big expectations that you have from the G20 summit.
Big expectation one is that I would hope some development is made in the debt management system and all. Coming quickly to the Biden-Modi bilateral, there could be some, grand announcements like a human space flight between ISRO, NASA, etc. That said, on US-India, you see, the US has a problem. The US is running out of ammunitions, supplying to Ukraine, NATO, Taiwan, preparing for a war with China. America needs a defense production base. America needs a factory for defense. India can fill that gap. That's one. And this is continuing from the jet engine deal, et cetera, et cetera. If you see, that's where it's headed. Nobody in this world is doing us any favor. I mean, a friend and all is all aside. As again, I would say, it's the matrix. You're playing in this matrix. So that's one. Secondly, with respect to Russia, I think, what is happening, US is slowly working with India, and we are also playing that role. We are preparing ourselves that come around a year from today, when Russia and Ukraine are tired, or maybe Ukraine is more tired, or maybe the West is more tired and pushing Ukraine towards a peace deal with Russia, India could then step up and play a peace-making role with Russia. India itself is preparing for it. We are politely giving, big picture announcements. There's no era of war, to sit down, dialogue, diplomacy, et cetera, et cetera. So America is investing in India in that sense to prepare for a peacemaker role in the future with Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, when the time is ripe. And we are also cautious. We don't want to step into a situation and say, okay, we'll make peace when we don't have any chips to carry. When neither of the parties want to talk peace, what are we doing there? We are not getting any leverage out there. So we are very cautious. We are putting up a position. America is realizing that, okay, come, let's say, and I'm projecting, let's say, 25, the year 25, summer or spring, would be the outside period at which a peace deal would be brokered, or a moratorium or armistice, whatever, in Ukraine. India is preparing for that role there. Now, overall in G20, yes,
we'll have to see how this really pans out, when the Russia-Ukraine conflict will end. But of course, peace and a way forward in debt restructuring is what is expected. Saurabh Shukla, last comments, closing comments from you on what are your, top three big expectations from the G20 summit.
One, India's establishment as a, I would say, leader of the global South. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's personal charisma on India's diplomacy, that gets reinforced. Third, I would say on debt restructuring, and also the fact that wars in the era of economic challenges are the worst things that could happen to the world. I hope we can find solutions to these challenges post the Delhi summit.
Okay. Ambassador Manjeev Puri, will we be able to find solutions to common challenges that the world faces? Will India be the country which leads the world to at least some of the solutions that the world is looking for?
Shreya, there should be no doubt that India is also providing segues in exactly the answers to what your question is. What will this summit do? We always talk about emerging economies. It is my belief that after this presidency, for the world in the real sense of the term, India will be an emerged economy and an emerged society and country, a country of serious interest to them and a country of serious heft for them. What do we expect out of it? Ways and means by which the development agenda, the sustainable development agenda, and this includes debt, climate financing, all of those get taken forward, not just in the G20, not in the countries, but in terms of multilateralism, and we take these things forward. I think all others are going to be areas which will be work in progress, again, to the benefit of the global South, but I dare say for the benefit of humanity. This will be a summit which will be remembered.
Absolutely. And, two very fascinating things about this summit has been that India put forth women-led development and youth contribution to world development at its focus and in its priority, that is something that we really need to look out for, considering the fact that India now has the largest population of youth. But also the other thing which always has fascinated me about the G20 grouping is the fact that you cannot find such a diverse grouping of developed as well as developing nations in one group around the world. No other grouping matches that. So we'll really have to see how these diverse economies and countries come together and find solutions to common problems. With that, I'll wrap this up here. Ambassador Manjeev Puri, Saurabh Shukla and Mr. Robinder Sachdev, thank you very much for joining us on Mirror Now and sharing your perspective on the big diplomatic blockbuster that is all set to take place in New Delhi. With that, we're heading for a short break. News and updates will continue on Mirror Now. Stay tuned.